Hello, and welcome to another edition of Heavy Hands. I'm your host, Connor. With me, as always, it's Mr. Phil. Yo, Phil. How are you today?
Not too bad. Travel cards.
Travel cards. We're smack in the middle of two of them. Last week, we went to Brazil for the first time, and it feels like years, featuring Charles Oliveira's first fight in Brazil since, I think, 2020, when he fought Kevin Lee in Brasilia. Jesus. And it was nice to see Charles Oliveira get the overflowing adoration of the local fans for the first time in a long time. And then coming up next week, we have an event in Vancouver, which I would rate as pretty good. Reinier de Ridder, Brendan Allen in the main event. I don't particularly care for Kevin Holland, Mike Malott, but I have no doubt it will be fun and weird and interesting to watch. Chito Vera is fighting Ayman Zahabi. Even Manon Fiorot, Jasmine Jasudavicius, is a meaningful fight at the very least. Charles Jourdain versus Davey Grant in the featured prelim slot. I like that one a lot. So, hey, if there's a card where I can name 4 fights that have some element of interest to them, I consider that a good card. Certainly by today's standards. But I think even back in the day, I would look at this and say, yeah, that looks like a fight night.
Yeah, it's pretty relevant fighters who are, mostly going to be in, like, really fun fights. Like Kyle Nelson, Matt Frivola.
Yep.
How is that going to be bad?
Exactly.
It just won't be.
Yeah. I like it. I mean, shit, even Cody Gibson, Aoriqi Lang. Like, are these guys going to be, like, title contenders? No, but it's a fine action matchup. Looks cool.
Yep.
So yeah, that's coming up next week, and we will get to some of those fights. Certainly, we will get to Reinier de Ridder versus Brendan Allen. But we figured we would start our episode today talking about last weekend's main event, because it's Charles Oliveira. And it isn't just people in Brazil who go apeshit for Charles Oliveira. He has a well-earned reputation as one of the UFC's most reliable action fighters. And to be honest, compared to the matchups that a lot of people have gotten out of Mateusz Gamrot over the years, I think it further proves Chucky Olives' action fighter bona fides that this is the fight we got. Also, as an avowed grappling hater, I mean, not really, but obviously I know a lot more about the art of striking and boxing and kickboxing than I do about the grappling aspect of MMA. This is the kind of grappling battle I like to see. Because Charles Oliveira just has sort of the ideal modern MMA guard game. In that it's very aggressive, and in addition to submission attacks, it is full of sweeps and escapes and reversals. And we got to see a lot of that. And to see him doing that to Gamrot, who's not a great top control player most of the time anyway, but still, Gamrot himself a very good scrambler. And to see Oliveira just kind of out-positioning him, it made for a very exciting grappling portion of this fight. On top of which, the striking was exciting in a classic Charles Oliveira kind of way. So I have no complaints about what we saw here. What are your thoughts?
I mean, this one kind of snuck up on me as a fight because I don't think we previewed it because we were too busy talking about
the pay-per-view,
the big pay-per-view. But obviously, like watching the actual card itself, and particularly seeing the Brazilian crowd and like hearing the cheers and stuff, and then getting to the point where Charles was walking out. And again, I hadn't put too much thought into this fight itself, other than thinking about the basics of the style matchup and so on, but not from like an emotional standpoint. I hadn't really like considered it. I was just like, oh yeah, it's a fun Charles Oliveira fight with a relevant opponent. But like when he was coming out, I just found myself thinking, God, I really don't want Charles to lose this.
Yeah, same.
Like, no disrespect to Gamrot either, because he's, also seems to be just like a lovely guy. He's, works really hard. Very likable in his own way. But I was just like, I mean, this is what we never had for Charles, as a champion. And, coming off that attempt to regain the lightweight belt against Topuria, it would be absolutely in front of this kind of crowd.
I know.
It would be absolutely heartbreaking to watch him lose.
Yeah.
And the thing was that I was thinking at the time is, and it seems like it's a significant possibility right now, because, not once the fight, not necessarily, when the fight itself was happening, but Charles is not too far removed from a fight against a fight against Michael Chandler where he did like noticeably worse than Paddy Pimblett.
Yeah.
He did not look good in that fight, and then went on to get like brutally KO'd. And Chandler himself has gone on to look like, utter shit.
Yeah.
And I was like, and he's taken tons of damage. He's been someone who's never been defensively strong. And it was 100% one of those fights where you're like, I would typically expect Charles Oliveira to win this fight against Gamrot for like basic dynamism reasons, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were they at their peaks? You would simply expect that Charles has too much firepower for you to narrowly decision him, which is typically how Gamrot actually, beats elite level opponents. But Gamrot has also proven like completely capable of snuffing out like aging fighters who are simply not able to compete with him.
Right.
Who was it? Carlos Diego Ferreira.
Yep.
He just knackered him. And
he's very fast.
Similarly, RDA and Fiziev both sort of fell apart against him. But, most of the rest of the time, he's winning narrow decisions based on, like, landing a few clean strikes, getting a takedown, which the opponent gets out of. And I just wouldn't expect that to work on prime Charles Oliveira. But I was like, is it going to work on current Charles Oliveira? I think it might, and God, I don't want it to.
I know exactly what you mean.
And instead, what we got was something that looked enough like prime Charles Oliveira for me to just be extremely relieved.
Yeah, I would say it was... I wouldn't even say enough like. I just think it was a vintage Chucky Olives performance.
Mm-hmm.
Really, like, this looks like the man who ran up to and won and even miraculously defended the title.
Yeah.
Like, the insane commitment to aggression at times, not just bordering on, but, doing border raids on recklessness, fully crossing the border, soaking up some shots that, even though they're coming from Gamrot, like, Gamrot's not a big puncher, but he is fast. And there was a point in the second round of this where he was starting to find the timing on that right hand. But, like, that's just part of the way Charles Oliveira used to fight. And it's as risky as it is, and as much as it absolutely played its part in getting him killed by Ilia Topuria, like, the willingness to embrace that risk is part of why it works. And you could see it was working on Gamrot. Like, even as he was landing, he was stumbling all over the place because Oliveira every time he gives ground, Oliveira just devours it and just stays right on top of him and doesn't respect the fact that Gamrot is able to hit him.
Yeah.
And that's
when it starts to wear on Gamrot the most.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
When he lands cleanly on Oliveira and then tries to use that little moment of hitting him to escape. And Oliveira simply chases him down and punches into the clinch immediately, almost every single time.
Yeah.
He's like, okay, you've taken that shot. How was it? And then Charles is simply jumping on him.
Yeah. At times was hitting him before he got the chance to reset, following him out of that pocket with that kind of lunging left hook, the exact shot he knocked out Michael Chandler with. And yeah, anticipating his sort of escape routes. I think Oliveira could just sense that Gamrot was landing these strikes not because he wanted to mix it up and hurt Charles, but because he wanted a pressure release. Mm-hmm. He didn't want the consequences of the strike to be the damage from the strike. He wanted the consequences to be breathing room.
Yeah.
And Oliveira refused to let him have it, which is exactly what he always did in his prime.
Yes.
And he didn't look notably slower to me.
Nope.
I think he just, yeah. You know, it's a good feeling because, like, you look back at the Chandler one stands out as like not a great performance. But if you look at the guys who have beaten Charles Oliveira, which are more than anything else, or at least equal to something like that Chandler fight, or the reason for us to think he's declining, it's fucking Ilya Tupuria and Arman Tsarukyan and Islam Makhachev.
Mm-hmm.
Like, these are...
And a narrow win for Tsarukyan at that.
Yeah, exactly. Tsarukyan, a guy who, still holds claim to having, like, the closest, most competitive loss to Makhachev that anybody has experienced. Giving him...
Except for Volk.
Except Volk, yeah, that's true. But giving him, just about as much trouble as anyone not named Alexander Volkanovski has. Mm-hmm. And more than that, has become like increasingly violent and destructive and is an incredible top shelf athlete with great stamina and a well-rounded game. And in particular, the true poison pill for Charles Oliveira, a crushing top game.
Yep.
Which is just not susceptible to the kind of basic structure of Oliveira's guard game. It's a bad matchup for Chucky. Mm-hmm. And the other ones are like generationally great fighters. And then you put him in here against a guy like Gamrot, who is like has a proven place as like a top 5, top 10 mainstay kind of fighter, but is not, and has never been a top contender for the title. And he just obliterated him.
Yeah.
Felt good.
I do also feel like it is a mental thing for Oliveira as well, that he was just like pumped up by the crowd, because
totally
this was this was a different man to the one who fought Chandler.
I agree.
And, very different from the Cerrones and the Lewises of the world who, are crushed by the pressure of fighting in their hometown.
Yeah.
I think he was just amped up by it. And yeah, you saw like we said, just looked like prime Charles out there. Yeah, all the excitement, all the aggression, and yeah, and it also reinforced to me why I didn't want to and still never want to see him fight Ilya Topuria again.
No, God no.
Like, I did want to fight him the first time, and I don't want to ever see him fight him again. He's like, I would like to fight Max for the BMF belt. That sounds great.
Let's do it. 100%. A rematch, like 10 years in the making at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jesus, when did that fight happen, actually? I have his page open. Let me check. He fought Max Holloway in 2015. August of 2015. It would literally be over a decade later.
Over a decade. Yeah.
And who doesn't want to see that? I love it.
Yep.
Even if I have a strong suspicion that, I mean, who knows? Oliveira can put that kind of pressure on Max, who is not typically a big one-shot knockout artist, certainly not in the early going. Maybe he could make something happen. It would be fun.
I think it would look like a much more exciting version of their last fight, and without the quick early finish where Oliveira got weirdly finished. It would, but yeah, I just think that you just can't be that. You can't be that defensively vulnerable against someone who puts out as much pace and damage as Max does.
Yeah, I do actually. I have something to say about Oliveira's defense, because obviously it got holes poked in it in this fight. But I'm sorry, I was just watching the end of the fight where he has his baby and he's holding it up with one arm for the crowd to cheer at. Obviously, yeah, it's not super sophisticated. He's got a layback and a slip he can go to sometimes, mostly, and this is an improvement over where he started. Say the version of Oliveira that fought Holloway the first time. He has a much more consistent and much tighter high guard, which helps him to evade shots to defend shots that he doesn't necessarily see coming in time to react. But it did make me think that, like, MMA is by and large still a sport full of terrible striking defense.
Yeah.
I mean, just look at that Davis and Figueiredo Montel Jackson fight. Like, that's a defensive shit show. Like, both guys massively overreacting and destroying their own positions, trying to get away from strikes and like giving ground haphazardly. Like, it's a mess. It made me think watching Charles here that how much a part of successful defense, or how effective your defense can be if you simply like don't react to things at all. Sometimes. Like being in a pretty good position, having a tight guard. We saw a lot of it in this fight, and we saw a lot of it in Charles's heyday and his championship reign. Like, people lunging from really far away to get to him. Their shots sometimes connecting, but frequently falling just short or bouncing off his guard. And this leaving Oliveira in perfect position to return fire. And then, of course, the opponent is falling over themselves trying to get back out of range, and he can chase them and kill them.
Yeah. He's over his feet, throwing mechanically tight punches the entire time.
So much of the bad defense we see in MMA is simply fighters overreacting. Losing their stance, giving way too much ground, leaning back. And the fact that even though, the same thing leads to him getting hit clean, plenty, the fact that Charles will just sort of ignore strikes kind of makes him a better defensive fighter than many of his contemporaries. It's a weird thing to say, but there's a power in just kind of remaining solidly over your feet.
Yeah. Yeah, it basically enabled him to freak out what are, a debatably better, put together, technical striker in, Justin Gaethje, and and almost certainly actually better put together defensive striker in Dustin Poirier. Dustin Poirier is much defensively better than Charles Oliveira, but it didn't matter because Oliveira just freaked him out until he was, as you said, overthrowing and losing where he was.
Yeah. So, technically, maybe worse defensively than many of these contemporaries, but functionally, it kind of works.
Yep.
Allowing for all those times that he gets hit really clean and really hard and gets knocked down. Which, if it was anyone other than Gamrot, very likely would have happened in this fight. But you know what? It looked like the kind of fight where, had that happened, he still wouldn't have lost.
Yeah.
This was just the
this
shape.
would have to be like the punch and finishing sequence of Gamrot's MMA career.
Yeah. Yeah. Even if he landed that shot, I'm telling you, this was just, you could just see it in his body language, his attitude. Like, this was going to be one of those nights where if he got hit really hard and knocked down, it would have been just like championship era Oliveira. He would have survived and gone immediately back on the attack.
Yeah, it felt just like championship era Oliveira.
Totally.
And as I said on Twitter, it's kind of bittersweet to see because we never got to see championship era Oliveira in Brazil. We never got to see this kind of he never got he got his Jose Aldo jumping off the cage moment here, but he wasn't a champion, and it makes me sad that Poatan has never fought in Brazil for the UFC.
Yep.
And he never will do until he's lost his belt. Until it's clear that he's no longer a title challenger that they can use for pay-per-views or whatever.
It's a shame.
We will never see Poatan fighting in Brazil as a champion, I don't think. I think maybe someone did say that they tried to book him for, was it UFC 300, maybe? But...
Well, 300 wasn't in Brazil.
Yeah, maybe one of the other ones.
When's the last Brazilian pay-per-view?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Feels like they hardly go to Brazil anymore.
Yeah. But yeah, the idea of a MMA world centered around Nevada, basically, and local areas, and
New York,
also the Middle East.
Yeah, Nevada, New York, and Dubai.
Yeah, basically means that we won't get to see that for Pereira. We won't get to see who is the man who is probably the UFC's biggest star at the moment. Fighting as a champion at home. Yeah,
it is a shame. It is. I ideally, I think every champion should get the chance to defend in front of a hometown crowd.
Mm-hmm.
What a feeling there was in that arena. I missed this aspect of the Brazilian fans, how they are the most partisan sports fans I've ever encountered.
They're just we like our guy and we hate the other guy.
We hate him. And even when they're not booing, like when Joel Alvarez started smushing Vicente Luque, they didn't have a particular number of boos for Alvarez compared to some other guys. Gamrot got a good amount of booing just for not being Charles Oliveira. But when he was just 10-8ing Luque in the second round of that fight, they were just dead silent. They're not booing or jeering. They're just this sucks. It's such a black and white response from the Brazilian crowd. Always has been.
Yep.
But that's a special feeling you get. You go to Paris, man, great crowd energy there. Those people are awesome. But they are basically going apeshit for everything. In Brazil, it's so partisan. You have to laugh.
Yeah. It's part of the personality of the place you're in.
Yeah.
You get the Uwe Morrer chants and and the extremely emotional crowd.
Yep. And Charles Oliveira running out into them like Aldo did after the first fight with Chad Mendes. By the way, what the hell are these? This always happens. What are these security personnel doing? Let the man run into the crowd. What do you think you're helping?
Yeah.
Is it a liability thing, or is it just security guards are prone to go on little power trips where people have to do what they tell them? Because
I don't know. Presumably, if the second one was the case, they would just be look, he's probably going to run into the crowd. He's basically achieved and won a championship if he wins this. He's just let him do it, okay?
Yeah.
It'll be a great moment for us, just like the Aldo one was. It's got to be some legal.
There always has to be some fat motherfucker in a suit, trying to drag him back over the fence when a thing like this happens. Just leave him alone. Let him have his moment. You think he's going to get attacked? Like the people love him. I don't know, but I enjoyed it. And I'm not nearly as big an Ilia Topuria hater as many. In fact, I would call myself a fan. And I think maybe I'm not as devoted a Chucky Olives fan as many. I'm a cold fish, basically. Mm-hmm. I feel nothing. I'm dead inside.
Me too.
But there was something very tragic about seeing Oliveira go down to Topuria the way he did, and this felt like a wonderful reversal from that.
Mm-hmm.
A feel good moment for the man in his home country. I really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, magical.
Okay, well, let's take a break on that note, and when we return, let's talk about the presumably middleweight number one contenders fight, at least if one of the guys wins, happening in Vancouver next weekend. That is Reinier de Ridder versus Brendan Allen after this.
Hey everybody, thanks for listening to this week's Heavy Hands. If you like what you hear, please consider pledging to support the podcast on Patreon. Patreon is basically continuous crowdfunding. You sign up to contribute a certain amount per month to help us with production costs and the like, and in return you get rewards ranging from a mention on the Heavy Hands website to a question or topic of your choice being discussed on the show. We have a lot more in the works to reward you for your help, and we appreciate every contribution. No amount is too small. Just head over to patreon.com and find how you can help out, the only show dedicated to the finer points of face punching. Now let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Heavy Hands. We are now talking about our upcoming main event. This event is happening in Vancouver, British Columbia. And the main event, Reinier de Ridder versus Brendan Allen. As I mentioned at the end of last segment, probably a number one contenders fight for Reinier de Ridder.
Yeah, I guess so.
Brendan Allen is like, we may talk about this with Montel Jackson later. He's a guy who put together numerically an astounding win streak at one point in this middleweight division. And at no point has felt like anything close to a clear frontrunner for a title shot. Despite that.
Yeah.
But Reinier de Ridder, he's hot at the moment, you know? Came out of nowhere, looked like a weird kind of gimmick fighter from his regional circuit. Showed up, got it's interesting, isn't it? Like, this happens all the time in all combat sports. Like, de Ridder has momentum and profile, and it even tricks, cynical bastards like us into thinking like, ooh, this guy's got something. And if you step back and try to be objective, you're like, okay, Robert Whittaker looked really, really bad fighting him. One of a series of pretty off-looking performances from him. He's almost certainly, he is certainly declining.
Yeah.
And we'll probably start losing. I mean, for all we know, he'll invalidate that win of de Ridder's in his next fight by looking even worse against somebody less impressive. And then it's like, okay, Bo Nickel, that gained de Ridder a lot of profile because everyone was paying attention to Bo Nickel for whatever reason. But like, Bo Nickel looked like shit. And you put that in the context of all the fights he did win, and you're like, maybe Bo Nickel is shit.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, right on the back of these wins, you look at Reinier de Ridder and you're like, I want to see this guy fight for the title. I hope he wins this so he can fight for the title.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, he definitely has the higher ceiling of the two.
Yeah.
This is what I think in some ways, like, the best thing you can say about this, is that, de Ridder at least, like, looks as though he has the potential to be, like, a dynamic threat in a title fight. Whereas, Brendan Allen is more just, he is the most middleweight, I think, in many ways.
Absolutely.
At the moment, because he's just a guy.
Yeah.
He's just like, hard-working guy who is, like, kind of good at MMA at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Like, has no... Like, I mean, his standout skill set is obviously his grappling, but, you know, he doesn't necessarily have the, like, wrestling to make it effective.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you look at him as, like, a specialist, if you look at him as, like, a specialist, pressure fighter, you know, he's simply not there, and he's simply outclassed by, like, Anthony Hernandez.
Yep.
So he just occupies this, like, perfectly middling spot where he's just enough of a specialist to be able to kind of wipe out a whole bunch of the people at middleweight who have glaring flaws in their game,
right,
whilst also being, like, just a very generic fighter.
Yeah.
He's tough, and he's aggressive, and he will throw hands, and he's got decent shot selection, and
bad defense.
His game doesn't really bolt together that well, but most people fighting him will blunder into a position where he's actually better than them, or they'll simply fold because he's extremely tough and gritty.
And he's got a lot of useful experience. He stays calm in a tough fight. You know, he's basically capable everywhere. Yeah, he is kind of the middleweight.
Yep.
And I will say, the one standout quality, not skill set even, but quality of Brendan Allen, which I think has informed a lot of his success in this division, is that he's the kind of guy, I think of Paul Felder. He's the kind of guy that if he faces somebody like Charles Oliveira, he will grapple with him.
Yeah.
Much like I was saying about Charles Oliveira's striking defense, sort of the fact that he, like, just doesn't respond with fear makes him a functionally good defensive fighter on the feet, or makes his defense good enough to keep him winning. Brendan Allen's willingness to test everyone's grappling has allowed him to kind of wear down dangerous grapplers that other people are afraid of.
Mm-hmm.
He does not shy away from that because it happens to be the opponent's A game. That might be the one kind of ephemeral quality of Brendan Allen's that really does make him a consistent ranked fighter. I don't know what that means for Reinier de Ridder.
De Ridder is, as I said, like, he's a more interesting fighter, and then he's got, like, a weirder skill set. He's just like he is also a grappler without amazing wrestling, who gets by being tough, but he's tall, and he's got a tall man's game, and he's got sort of step knees, and he's mysteriously become, like, twice as muscular over his time in the UFC. And
they don't get the good shit in Europe.
No. But yeah, he seems like the sort of less known quantity. But, like, yeah, he has become more athletic and threatening over his time in the UFC, and you get the impression that he has, that maybe he hasn't yet shown us his ceiling, which is what, you know, makes you want to see him go into higher level fights, even though I have zero confidence that he would win any of them.
Right.
I do not know about this fight because I came into it, like, thinking I was going to pick de Ridder for a bunch of those reasons. Like, he's able to fight more at range. I don't trust Brendan Allen's range game whatsoever because he doesn't really have one. He just, you know, he's the classic, like, I'm going to box you until you take me down and die archetype. But then I watched that Whittaker fight, and I'm just like,
does de Ridder?
Such a bad performance from Robert Whittaker.
And it also makes you
all
ask...
he is doing is trying to, you know, line up the long jab or the right hand on a much taller opponent, and he just stays there, and de Ridder will lunge in or will step knee him, and Whittaker is like not reacting to what's happening. He's not changing his approach. He's not doing anything that he used, he's not throwing in combination. He's not just kicking him to pieces from range. He's just sitting there trying to set up like a singular intercepting strike, which de Ridder has clearly picked up on. And the thing is that I'm just not that convinced that like de Ridder has cleaned up elements of his game which were troubling him in, all of his other UFC fights. Like,
I mean, it troubled him in the Whittaker fight.
Mm-hmm.
He is like, this is the question I was going to ask before. Like, does de Ridder have a more functional range game? Like, he's got reach.
Yeah, he does have a range. Yeah, he's got reach. Okay, there we go.
He's got reach, and he's
got reach, and he throws long strikes.
Yeah, he will throw a jab. But he's a fucking mess at long range.
Mm-hmm.
Like, his defense is, I noted that Brendan Allen doesn't have great defense before. Like, de Ridder is, he is like a contradiction to the ideas of good defense.
Mm-hmm.
He does things that are anti-defensive. His feet are all over the place. He's picking his chin up in the air. He's turning away from the opponent. And it's a testament to his toughness, because he's one of those guys where every time he gets hit, it seems to be as clean as somebody could possibly get hit.
Mm-hmm.
He does not have even the sort of feel for rolling with a shot. He's a mess as a striker. I would say the main two qualities that make de Ridder effective on the feet, and these may very well be qualities that lead him to a win here, are that, like Chucky Olives, he is willing to be crazy aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
He simply doesn't respect the fact that he's one of the most hittable men at a top level in the UFC. And he's got a clinch, and his clinch is really dangerous. And so if he can pressure you and run you out of room, he will collide with you and absolutely savage you with knees to the body and to the head.
Mm-hmm.
That's what makes him a factor on the feet. It's like his size, which is kind of effective, but equally kind of a liability, scares opponents into bad positions where he can then collapse the distance and crush them from short range. And this also means that he can find weird ways to start grappling exchanges with them. But yeah, like, this is kind of why I started off talking about like the sense you get of de Ridder as a guy who has gotten some banner wins versus the reality of like who those guys are at the time he beat them, or who they are in general as fighters, and what his game actually looks like. Does it pass the eyeball test? And it's not, I'm not certain.
Yeah, I mean, this is the other thing is that I am unsure of how well his game functions against people who are not scared of his clinch.
Precisely, yeah.
Because I think it was against Mearshart when he's fighting Mearshart and he's just getting hit on every transition.
Yep.
And it's just that he can sort of broadly out-physical him. And yeah, there are just so many points in his game where he's just there to be hit. And it's just that no one's been able to capitalize. It was, as I said, an almost legendarily like bad version of Robert Whittaker, who was just completely stuck on a single form of the fight that lost to him.
Yeah.
And it was still like a fairly close fight from what I can remember.
Oh,
Am I being correct?
Almost...
I think I've just mind bleached it.
It was close in that Whittaker was broadly losing, and had bad optics for almost the entire fight, but he also almost finished de Ridder at one point, and when he was still when he was still fresh in the first round, was hitting him at will.
Yeah.
So it was really, yeah. And Whittaker, even like, this looks like a declined version of him. Even a fresh Whittaker, we know, he does not enjoy fighting guys who are much taller and longer than him. He hates it. These are, every single time this has happened, it has resulted in a slew of career worst performances. Every time.
Yep.
So yeah, it's just not, Whittaker is not suited, was never suited, and is particularly unsuited at this point to have a good showing against Reinier de Ridder, is how I feel in hindsight.
I mean, I feel like, if it was prime Robert Whittaker, he simply just would have knocked him out immediately.
Certainly, yeah. He may very well have, just because de Ridder is so fucking hittable, and Whittaker was faster, and
he would have been completely unconcerned about the level change, and thus would have just booted him to death and then knocked him out.
Yeah, he was. It's true. He was one of those.
It might have been a crazier fight a la Brunson, but it wouldn't have looked like that.
Yeah. He was one of those rare fighters who was so assured in his takedown defense that he could kind of just ignore the threat until it became a problem.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, I don't know how well de Ridder's game works against someone who's, again, not scared of the takedown threat, and B, just walks their way into range, just throwing strikes the entire time. Again, Gerald Meerschaert is just tags him up a bunch, just all the time. And it's mostly because de Ridder, out wrestles him and knocks him down at one point, but he manages that he comes out on top. But you're just thinking Brendan Allen, like Charles Oliveira, he stays over his own feet. He throws okay combinations. He hits the body. He's incredibly mentally tough. What if he just sticks on top of de Ridder and just keeps throwing in the spaces where de Ridder is really bad?
Yeah. I suppose a major equalizing factor is one of the first things that you mentioned, which is another, and I think more valid reason to think of de Ridder as more of a real player in the division, his dynamism. De Ridder is dangerous. Pretty much everywhere the fight goes. I think he is constantly looking to do damage, constantly looking to sink in chokes. He is very finish oriented, and his game does have a kind of overall pressure, which he just fights like he is trying to create a finish at all times. Brendan Allen, he's got some good submissions under his belt, but is not really a reliable finisher at the high level.
He does have a lot of finishes in his recent run. Wait a minute, let me check. A decision Vittori, he also decision Chris Curtis, and he lost Hernandez and Imavov. He submitted Paul Craig, submitted Bruno Silva, submitted Andrew Muniz, submitted Christoph Yotko, decision Jacob Malkoon, submission San Alvi. Admittedly, none of these people are that good.
They're all not very good ever or well past it.
Yeah.
That's the thing. I mean, like I said, he has submission skills, but when he has been fighting other, confident, athletically potent top-level fighters, he doesn't get his submissions, and he's certainly...
I mean, with de Ridder has finished Meerschaert, Holland, and Nickel. So...
Yeah, it's true.
We can't
it's a fair
gas
point.
him up too much as a devastating offensive threat.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, I think in particular with the striking, it's just much easier for me to see de Ridder hurting Brendan Allen with, say, a knee which again, I think is the only really dangerous and truly effective, part of his striking game. The only really great phase he has on the feet or range. It's easier to envision that than it is Brendan Allen hurting him worse than, say, Gerald Meerschaert did. Like, he's going to hit him. There's no question of that. But who has Allen, like, ever significantly hurt with strikes? I think he might have shaken up the ghost of Marvin Vettori at one point in that last fight. Who can remember? But, like, he's a bit impotent as a striker, unfortunately. Maybe it's besides the point. I mean, maybe this is a fight where, like, it was de Ridder's, like, willingness to be taken down and to keep the fight moving after that freaked out Bo Nickel so much. He just likes to maintain momentum of any kind. But again, like, that is kind of Allen's superpower, is that, like, he will just sort of grapple very solidly against everyone. Including, like, early goings of the fight with Anthony Hernandez, where he was gaining top position and he was putting the pressure and taking Hernandez's back and floating on top of him. Like, it doesn't matter who it is, and some of them will ultimately beat him, but I don't know that it's really been proven that de Ridder has that kind of sustainability as a potent grappler against somebody who just is happy to grapple with him. I don't know. I mean, I really, like, feel quite coin flippy about this one.
Yeah, I think I will actually pick Brendan Allen.
Lay it out for me.
I think I just trust him to fill more space with strikes. Like, again, he is a bit like Charles Oliveira. He doesn't have the, like, frame or power advantage that Oliveira has, but he just stays over his feet and just throws shots at people. And he doesn't rush in. And that's basically a lot of what makes de Ridder work as a striker.
True.
Which is that he's either looking for the opponent to level change so that he can step knee them, or they're, like, rushing in to get past his reach, and then he just takes them down or clinches up with them.
Or they are fleeing in desperation.
Yeah. And I think Allen will just, like, walk in on him, just throwing shots the whole time.
Yeah, and stand his ground and put combinations together.
Yeah. I still just think, like, I mean, he looks like he's a genuinely dreadful fighter in the pocket, like, aside from the fact that he's just got, like, a nasty clinch and reach. But he's getting tagged up in there by everyone. And I think it will be, like, a close and probably actually genuinely, like, pretty fun fight. There'll be lots of scrambles. I agree. Neither of these guys are. I think the worst outcome is obviously, like, if they just have a kickboxing match. Neither of these guys are great offensive wrestlers. They're both tremendous scramblers. I mean, maybe, I think a solid reason to pick de Ridder, I think, is also that he is just the more willing of the two to initiate takedowns. He is a better wrestler, I think, at least partially because he actually just goes for it. And that was a big reason why we picked Fluffy over Brendan Allen, because he was just like, he's actually just got a functional game and he's going to be initiating the scrambles and hence is going to have the initiative.
Yep.
So I think that's definitely something to consider. But yeah, I just can't get over the idea that, like, I just think that, like, de Ridder is going to be really bad on the feet against someone who just doesn't care. Who just stands in front of him and just throws punches over and over. And I think Brendan Allen will honestly do that.
Yeah. I mean, now there are some Brendan Allen fights to consider, which could be instructive here, which are probably going to lead me to pick de Ridder. Again, I do think de Ridder as a striker is more potent. Just in the clinch. But he will do serious damage with those knees. We've seen it multiple times now. But I'm thinking of Brendan Allen, Sean Strickland. Now, granted, Sean Strickland is about 3 universes removed from Reinier de Ridder as a defensive operator on the feet. And that is part of the pressure that makes people freak out against Sean Strickland, because he truly can, negate a lot of what a pretty meat and potatoes kickboxer like Allen will try to do. But Sean Strickland put a lot of pressure on Allen, and Allen really didn't like it. Likewise, Chris Curtis.
First time.
Even the second time, it was Allen doing a slightly more consistent version, but he was stuck on the back foot and did a lot of retreating. And I think in a fight with a guy like de Ridder, who is typically very committed to moving forward and creating clashes and mixing in the takedowns, I agree. He may not be any better as a takedown artist than Allen technically, but functionally, the aggression makes it happen more reliably. He got fucking Whitaker down. Just the pressure alone will create those opportunities. But I think with a guy like de Ridder, Allen is going to respond more defensively and evasively, and will play into the kind of pressure and initiative that de Ridder wants to create.
Yeah, that is the other problem with him just being a very generic man, is that this applies to his cagecraft and directionality as well.
Yes, yeah.
What fight are we having today?
Yep. And he is certainly, it is not one of his specialties. He is no better than the average MMA fighter with his cagecraft and his footwork.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I think that, combined with the fact that Allen is just not a striker who hurts people with any regularity, if hardly ever does it happen, is going to make me pick de Ridder.
Mm-hmm.
I think de Ridder's going to go in there acting like it's a fight where, even if he is not on paper a more effective finisher against a better level of opponent than Allen, he fights like a finisher.
Yep.
Like I said, he is going out there forcing opportunities to do damage and to have the opponent expose themselves to bad positions. A little bit like a completely fucked up version of Anthony Hernandez, who, suffered a bad first round against Allen and then took over. And Allen, at no point could he stage any kind of momentum swing once Hernandez gained control of the fight. Granted, that's Hernandez's specialty. But in a much jankier and stupider looking way, I think de Ridder can kind of create the same shape of fight.
Yeah. Yeah, I do find myself wondering if Allen can just stay on top of him. I just think he might fall to pieces, as he did all the way back in his one championship fights with what's his face, who was admittedly a big ripped up dude who just chased him around the cage.
Oh, de Ridder.
But, yeah.
Malikin.
Yeah. When the takedown reps and the level change threat stops working and the step knee and so on, there isn't much behind it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this is a very, very close fight. Part of me picking Allen is simply contrarianism, where I'm just I still can't quite see it. I know that de Ridder is, he looks like a more interesting fighter to go moving forward.
Oh, yeah.
But I still can't stop myself from thinking that there is something just deeply, fundamentally broken in his game.
Yeah, there's no doubt about that. I've never known you to be a contrarian, though, Phil.
Oh, of course not.
No, this is where you say, yes, I am. It's a golden opportunity, Phil.
That's what you expected me to do.
Oh, fuck, you're right. It's this fourth dimensional chess contrarianism. So yeah, I agree. I think it'll be possibly an ugly and at times frustrating, but action wise, I expect it to be a pretty fun fight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Let's see why it wouldn't be.
Yeah. So let's take one more break. When we come back, we might look at a couple of these fights. I'm not sure which ones will make it or how many we'll talk about, but options are Chito Vera, Ayman Zahabi, Charles Jourdain, Davey Grant, and then from last week, Davison Figueiredo, Montel Jackson, Joel Alvarez, Vicente Luque. We'll see what happens, but something from that selection after this.
Financial support is fantastic, but there are other, even easier ways to support Heavy Hands. Perhaps the best is by spreading the word. We know our fan base. You're all cool, popular people with serious social media presences. You're tastemakers and trendsetters. Okay, there are one or two of you that don't fit that description. You know who you are, but no matter what, you can always help us out by telling folks about the show. And you can also give us a positive rating and review on iTunes and things like that. We rely on word of mouth and positive feedback to grow and improve, so thank you very much for your time and your help. Now, back to the show.
All right, last one to discuss briefly here. The featured prelim slot on this card is taken up by Charles Jourdain and Davey Grant. The aforementioned Davey Grant. I can't help but love this matchup.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is basically a matchup where it's two guys that I can't help but love almost any matchup they put them in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very curious to see how this plays out because Jourdain to me, he can be somewhat inconsistent, but on a good night, he's like all the best parts of Adrian Yanez's game. Sharp, accurate, like fundamentally sound boxer. I think, again, on a good night, he's much less prone to like going wild and overthrowing and just kind of like sticking behind his jab and putting together sharp combinations and selecting his targets very intelligently than Yanez is. But we know what brought out the extreme craziness of Yanez's approach in that fight, which is Davey Grant makes everyone nervous. Because Davey Grant, he may not get a lot of knockouts, but he certainly swings like he's going to knock you out with every shot he throws. And is just a equal parts weird and very intelligent fighter. So I think this will be, that's what really interests me here. Not only do I just like both these fighters, but can Charles Jourdain like keep his cool fighting Davey Grant? Or is he going to get overwhelmed and do something weird?
Yeah. We talked about Davey Grant a lot of times before. Like, he's one of these guys where it's remarkable that he's had the longevity that he's got. He's 39 now. In a division like this.
Yeah.
And fighting the way he does.
Yeah.
Because again, it's not like he's not, he doesn't have veteran craft, but it's not veteran craft in a, risk mitigation kind of way. It's a veteran craft in a, I'm going to make you think about what I'm going to do to you next kind of way.
I mean, it is risk mitigating functionally, like.
I mean, yeah, in that people, get scared and hurt by it, but it's not like, I'm going to try and pare down the fight into, 3 exchanges per round that I'm going to try and win.
To the extent that Davey Grant neutralizes his opponents, he does it very proactively.
Yeah.
He still does have like pretty underrated defensive skills. He's got a good sense of range. He does respond to strikes coming his way, and he very reliably counters. But yeah, he's not doing the Davison Figueiredo, nor has he ever. He is just like, that's the other thing about Davey Grant that makes him so fascinating and awesome is that his fights play out like crafty veteran fights. He is crafty, but he's not like clean. His technique is totally idiosyncratic. But yeah, I can't help it. I love the guy. There's something really cool about him having this totally unique style that he just knows exactly how to play it. And he also strikes me as a fighter who, a lot of Jourdain's wins recently, to be honest, it's like a surprising trick submission, the guillotine in particular, Or it's like he's fighting fucking Kron Gracie.
Yeah.
Somebody who's just completely outclassed. Like, what really is the limit of, like, just looking at it in a vacuum, Jourdain's boxing is sweet. Self-evidently good, but I'm not sure what it looks like. Davey Grant will test him. He'll test his nerve, he'll test his defense, and his overall skill for the entirety of the fight. I don't know. I find this a very difficult fight to call, to be honest.
I find it very, very tricky. Because, Jourdain has, like... I mean, what he struggled with, what Jourdain has struggled with the most has been range, most of the time.
Yeah.
Is that, like, if he's up against someone who can...
Sean Woodson.
Can touch him from the outside.
Sean Woodson, the guy whose name we couldn't think
of. Erosa, right? Mm-hmm. Didn't Erosa beat him?
I want to say yes. Yes, he did.
Yeah. Just, like, suddenly his game falls apart because he wants to be drawing you onto, like, flurries of shots and, like push kicks, and he's got, like, a good clinch game that he wants people to overcommit into. But he's, when people are just beating him up from the outside, he's just like, he's just forced to back out of the pocket and reset to a range that isn't his own. Mm-hmm. So Woodson kind of dismantling him a bit technically, and Erosa just started just chasing him down with combinations.
Yep.
The other part is, obviously like the takedown defense, which he's been sort of solving by being unique and tricky and weird.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it just seems like it's going to be a very close fight because I think Davey Grant is almost certainly going to take him down.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think Grant is quite the sort of consistent range threat that's been able to just neutralize Jourdain, and nor is he quite the does he have the kind of speed edge that like Nathaniel Wood needed.
Yeah. However, I can see Jourdain in these fights with tall guys in particular, like responding badly to counters and giving up lots of ground in bad positions. And I can absolutely envision Grant getting a ton of opportunities to chase him out of the pocket.
Yeah. I think I'm just going to say I'm going to edge this one. I can't pick a 39-year-old man to win this fight.
I'm going to pick Davey Grant.
Yeah.
I've got faith.
I definitely want Davey Grant to win. I'm not going to lie.
Honestly, I'd be happy with either guy winning. If Jourdain wins, it'll mean passing a very significant test.
Yeah.
And if Davey Grant wins, it's one of the coolest old guys in the entire sport getting another win.
Yep. But yeah, I got to say I'm going to edge it because I know it's going to be a super high-paced fight.
Yep.
And I just can't trust that. Even though Davey Grant just miraculously doesn't look like he's aging at all in any fight, he just looks exactly the same every single time.
Yep.
I still have to be like, at some point, he's a 39-year-old bantamweight, and he's gonna look old.
Not yet. Hey, this is the week of Jose Aldo's official retirement. I think it's time for Davey Grant to dig out a Jose Aldo classic and fuck the gravedigger in his ass.
Hell yeah.
One more time, deflowering the gravedigger. I suppose that's the last thing we should mention before we wrap up. Jose Aldo retired. I was very pleased. I mean, I find very little cause to praise the UFC for anything these days. And they made a mockery of this new tradition by giving it the same treatment to Anthony Smith. But I do like that even if they're only willing to give a fighter sort of individual credit when their career is officially done.
Mm-hmm. Once you have admitted to us in a legally binding way that you are no longer going to be attempting to fight in the sport, and thus your services cannot be bought by anyone else, we will offer you some respect.
Yeah. We will acknowledge you as an individual in this fundamentally individual sport. We will acknowledge you as a separate, cognizant entity who has done all these incredible things. But hey, cynical as I am, I like that the UFC gives these retirement moments to these legendary fighters. And for Jose Aldo to get it in Brazil, we talked when Charles Jourdain was running out in the crowd about the reception. Oh, excuse me. Yeah, when Oliveira ran out into the crowd.
I don't think he would want to run out into a Brazilian crowd. No. It would be a bad idea.
Probably not. But when Jose Aldo did the same thing after beating Mendes in Brazil, like, I'm very pleased that he got to make this announcement in Brazil. And I mean, the people down there just fucking love the man.
As well they should.
Yeah, absolutely. So farewell, Jose. Please don't come back. Do some exhibitions or whatever. That's fine, but please don't try to do MMA again. Not for real.
Yeah. Sensational career, like, gave us so much more than we could have possibly asked for. Like, more than enough. More than enough.
More than enough. Yep. All right. Well, on that note, I think we are going to wrap up this week's episode of Heavy Hands. Go check out the Patreon. There's definitely going to be a little bonus content on there from this week's recording session, talking about some of the undercard fights from both last week's card and this upcoming one. And, what's happening next week? Oh, UFC 321. Is that next week or is there? It is. Aspinall versus Gane.
Okay then.
But hey, we also have Umar Nurmagomedov, Mario Batista, Virna Jandiroba, Mackenzie Dern, Alexander Volkov, Jailton Almeida. Okay.
Fair enough.
Alexander Rakic, Azmat Mirzakhanov. That's actually like a meaningful light heavyweight fight.
Yeah, pretty decent.
Pretty good.
Yes.
Jin-Young Park, Ikram Aliskerov, Ludovic Klein, Mateusz Rebeski, classic mid-card action material. This is looking pretty good.
Yeah, and I was thinking, like, Tom Aspinall, he's one of the few non-American fighters to be able to have what is sort of nominally a title fight at home, because he fought Curtis Blades for the interim championship, which became the real championship. So I was looking at this one thinking, I wonder if this is going to be like a UK... I don't know, of course it's not.
No, of course. It's in Abu Dhabi. So expect the polar opposite of the wonderful atmosphere we had last weekend in the Brazil card. I expect even the quiet, staid folks of Vancouver, British Columbia to give a better audience vibe than the folks in Abu Dhabi typically do. But hey, on paper, it's a very good-looking pay-per-view card. So we'll have good stuff to talk to you about next week. And until then, if you came here today for the finer points of face punching, you came to the right place. This has been Heavy Hands.